Hi guys, one of the videos I've got for you today is on just putting an insert behind an open section on a t-shirt. One of my clients has got young daughters and she bought these really lovely stretch tops, but the keyhole, she felt it was just a bit too much exposure, so she wanted to put something behind it. So we used chiffon, and I doubled the chiffon. So there's a couple of things, because it's a very short video, there's a couple of things in it that I didn't video. One, if you're doing anything like this, just slide a piece of paper into the garment so that you can trace whatever the hole is. Like in this case it's like a keyhole, and then you can just cut that out and then add your seam allowance, and that's your template to make your, whatever you're going to use to cover it. Because it was double, I stitched it and then I overlocked it. Just a couple of things, tips when you're doing something like this. I used my tailor's arm so that I could slide the chiffon in underneath and I could pin it on quite well. I also, you always use a stretch needle when you're sewing stretch. I use Smith 7511s. And you'll notice I also use my plastic buttonhole foot, and the reason I do that is that I find when I'm doing particularly stretch like this, if I use my standard metal foot or a Teflon foot, that it tends to drag. So I find that the single buttonhole foot works really well. It's got grooves underneath, and it does, sort of adhere to the fabric a lot better. I use pins to kind of ease it in. I didn't video the whole thing because I just thought, well, it's pretty straightforward. But I just thought, those little tips might help you if you want to do something like this for yourself. So that's it. Happy altering. So as I mentioned before, there are a few things that you can do when you're inserting something like this that can be of help. If you've got a tailor's arm, it's great to actually lift it onto a tailor's arm. If you don't, you could put a wide plastic ruler. I don't know if you've seen those really wide rulers, but you need to put something in between the back of the garment and the front of the garment so that you can, slip the new piece in and pin it into place. Now, the other thing is that I always think about, when I'm pinning something onto a garment, I always think about how I'm going to sew that. Which way am I going to go? Am I going to start on the left or am I going to start on the right? Now in this instance, I decided I'm going to start on the right, and so that means that when I pin it, I'm going to place the pin so that I can pull the head out towards me as I'm sewing. There'd be no point, for example, in having the pin head in the opposite direction, because all of a sudden, it gets a bit difficult pulling your pins out as you go. You'll also notice, and I've said this many times, that I use large quilting pins, and more often than not they've got a glass head. And the reason for that is obviously that if you buy pins that have got a plastic head, then if you happen to be ironing or something like that and you've still got a pin in for whatever reason, and the iron melts the plastic head, you can end up with a lot of problems. So the other thing is, when you're doing something around a neckline, you don't really want to push the neckline into the sewing machine, into your, if you've got a free arm like I have. Move it up from the bottom, so start from the hem and then slide it in. And that way you've got all that movement, like you can maneuver it a lot better than, say, if you had tried to push it in from the neck and in this instance it's actually a like a polo, so the neck is very, very narrow. A couple of things with this: whenever you're sewing a net, always use a stretch needle. My preference is the Smith's brand, and they have a stretch needle which is labelled a 75/11. So that's their stretch needle, and it also has little red and yellow paint marks on it so that you can easily recognize it. Now the other thing, and it's really the last little tip, is that I use my single buttonhole foot when I'm sewing stretch. I find that the standard metal or Teflon foot tends to drag, particularly on a knit like this, because this is a machine knit. So I use the buttonhole foot, and also I use a really strong pin, and I'm just kind of easing it in all the way around. So with something like this, just take your time, and that's how you place something into an area that you want to close off. And I'm not sure when you're watching this video, but it's March 2018 when I'm doing it, and a lot of people are wondering, my book has been sold out, Clothing Alteration Secrets Revealed. So I am taking orders because I'm getting it reprinted. It does have the Jean Genie on the inside cover, which allows you to sew the professional jeans hems. So if you would like one of those, just send me an email to judith@jeanniecentre.com or support@jeanniecentre.com, and I'll put your name down so that you can look at buying one when they become available. Happy altering!